Local history is such an important and essential part of our understanding of the world and understanding different perspectives that people have. It allows us to walk in the shoes of others and to get that firsthand knowledge, that experience of being where those people walked. And it is so important that we walk out our doors and take a look at what's around us. So for this video, I'm going to be talking about where I live. I live on Long Island in New York, and I live in Setauket, and that was where the Washington spy ring was mainly based in, and there's just so much history that was preserved from this, and it is just so interesting how everything came together and how they were major players in the American Revolution. In this video, I'm going to be talking about what the spy ring did and why they were important, and the major players of the spy ring, which were Benjamin Talmadge, Robert Townsend, Caleb Brewster, and Abraham Woodhull. They all impacted the war and helped Washington win. This is the birthplace of Benjamin Talmadge. He was born in 1754. He basically was one of the main players in the American Revolution spy ring. So here he grew up with his childhood friends, Abraham Woodhull and Caleb Brewster and Robert Townsend. And here was where he slowly resented British occupation in New York. And eventually in 1776 he was commissioned as a lieutenant and eventually rose up the ranks, and his first battle was the Battle of Long Island, and he written the brutal accounts of what happened, and he wanted to make a change. And in 1778 he would gather all of his childhood friends on Long Island to create the Culper spy ring. Now with the Culper spy ring, he was the main player. Him and George Washington would come together and try to gather people, gather as much intelligence as possible, and with the help of Abraham Woodhull and Caleb Brewster and a strong Robert Townsend, they were able to make this happen. Where Abraham Woodhull, one of the leaders of the Culper spy ring, lived, unfortunately it was burnt down, but this whole entire property was basically all of Anna Strong and the Woodhull family. And so with that being said, in 1778 Abraham Woodhull was delivering contraband to Connecticut and he was caught, and Benjamin Talmadge just so happened to be there and got him out of jail and basically was like, you want to be a part of the spy ring. So that's how that story happened. And Abraham Woodhull was a major player. He would say he was visiting his sister and husband in Manhattan at the boarding schools, but really he was going into other boarding houses where the British were to get intelligence. And he would bring it back, and just a short distance away he would deliver messages to Caleb Brewster, and since he was a whaler, and he would deliver those messages in Connecticut. And then this would be the short distance away from where Caleb Brewster would literally row across the Long Island Sound into Connecticut to deliver the intelligence messages. To show the importance of what the spy ring did, I'm just going to give a few major examples of what they were able to accomplish and prevent from happening. The information that was supplied by the spy ring included details regarding a surprise attack that was going to happen in Rhode Island in regards to the new French forces that recently came to help America. Um, they also recovered a plan, this whole scheme that the British were plotting to counterfeit the American currency on actual paper use for the continental dollars, which promoted the Continental Congress to actually retire those bills. The ring also gave Washington information in regards to Tryon's raid, which was in July of 1779. It was intended to basically divide forces and allow Lieutenant Sir Henry Clinton to attack the piecemeal, basically. In 1780, the ring discovered high-ranking officer Benedict Arnold to be a traitor and basically was plotting with Major John Honore to turn over West Point, basically. And the fact that they were able to do this was such a major accomplishment, and they prevented a lot of things from happening. And if it wasn't for these men, who knows what would have happened. But the way that they went about it was just very amazing. You had Abraham Woodhull, who was the leader of this, who would be going into Manhattan trying to get intel for a few weeks, go into Setauket, give the information to Caleb Brewster, and Caleb will go into Connecticut and give this information to Talmadge, and Talmadge would go to Washington with this information. So it was a whole system that they had. They had specialty ink, invisible ink that would be used, so if God forbid something was intercepted, no one would be able to read it but the spies were in Washington. So that was one of the most groundbreaking things to ever have come from this. And also, Benjamin Talmadge was a major player in creating this special code book that you had. 711 was George Washington. Samuel Culpeper was Abraham Woodhull. Sam Culpeper Jr. was Robert Townsend. So you had all these code names that it was just so intricate and amazing how they were able to change the tide of the war because of the actions that they did. And with that, you had people like Robert Townsend, who was an excellent merchant at that time, who would actually eventually be in Manhattan to get intel. Because he was a merchant, it was kind of easier for him to get information and not be known as a suspicious kind of person. So he would actually come to Setauket eventually and give the information to Woodhull, and it was just a whole amazing system of what these men were able to do. There's no doubt in my mind that the Washington spy ring had such a big impact on the American Revolution, and the way at which I was able to step out my door and experience it firsthand is amazing in itself. And I was able to really dive in and get into the mindset that they would have had back in the day, and just how intricate everything was. It was amazing in itself. And the fact that now these are all landmarks, and about 1 million people a year come to where I am just to visit all these places. Setauket is just one small part. There are, I believe, around 50 miles worth of local history that has to do with the Washington spy ring and the American Revolution. And the way that people just come to understand it and want to experience it is amazing also. And there's no doubt in my mind that, like, I highly recommend people reading into this and understanding it, because I feel like this is something that maybe a lot of people don't realize is something that was a real driving force for the American Revolution.